the inner journey. During the course of a satsang, the master once described the journey one would travel within. He began by explaining that when we try to express ourselves on this plane, we use words and writing, facial expressions, and the like, to convey our meaning to each other. When, however, we begin to go within, we find ourselves perceiving directly. The result of this is an increase in our powers of discernment on this plane, and earthly methods of communicating become increasingly inadequate. This means that any description of our inner exaltation must be inadequate. The further we proceed, the more difficult it becomes to convey the sheer spiritual transport we experience. Just as the written word is not as expressive as the spoken word, with all the nuances of facial expression and gesture to give it its true emphasis, inner experiences are far more rich in spiritual significance than those of this earthly body. It is for this reason, I suppose, that earthly descriptions of internal transport sound inadequate, whereas a pointer is really being used, which will act as a simple indication to the traveler on this path that he is on the right way, and that will, at the same time, have as universal a validity as possible for all who read or hear it. Much as a map, though not fully resembling the countryside, nor conveying its true atmosphere, can act as a working guide to it. At all events, in the early stages of the spiritual journey, each one approaches their goal, bringing a different mentality to bear on their surroundings as they go, so that an average has to be struck which all will recognize clearly. The parlance of each successive plane seems incomprehensible to those below. This barrier is necessary, for every soul on the path must work individually, and deserve his entry into and understanding of each region. Moreover, those in higher planes recognize the parlance of lower planes and appreciate the necessities which fashion them. But this is not so in reverse. To those on lower planes, the language and usages of higher planes is incomprehensible until they rise into them. The master drew a simple simile to illustrate this. A young child, beginning his school life, would not understand how to solve a problem in higher mathematics, but to an advanced student, addition and subtraction would offer no problem. When making spiritual progress, however, a paradox occurs, for those minds not over-encumbered with intellect find their way more quickly than agile minds, for love of the master makes them interested not in the means, but in the end. To them, nothing is impossible or absurd if he has declared it to be possible. We were told that whilst repeating the words, Simran, given to us at initiation, having concentrated our attention at the third eye and broken through the dark veil that obscures the path in the first stages, we step out as through a window. We appear to go through the brightness of the sun and the moon, where at a point known as the eight-petaled lotus, Ashdalkanwal, we are very lovingly welcomed by the refulgent form of the radiant master, his Nuri Sarup. This is a moment of the deepest significance to the disciple, for he begins to understand and accept the workings of his fate karma, pralabdha, and to be content with the manner of its repayment. Also the sound current, shabad, becomes stronger, and its power of attraction exerts a magnetism on the attention of the satsangi, to such an extent that he now finds it as difficult to stay out in the world of phenomena as before he found it difficult to go in. Most important of all, from this point the master's radiant form never leaves his disciple until the highest plane is reached. Simran is held in abeyance, whilst the radiant master is visible to the disciple, and they proceed through this sub-astral plane, piercing the brightness of the stars and reaching the astral zone known as Sahansdal Kanwal, or the thousand-petaled lotus. This is a mental transforming station where the power which supplies all lower planes is both stored and generated, It appears to radiate an unearthly light like that of 1,000 candles, or a flame with 1,000 tongues, so penetrating and refulgent that it warrants its descriptive name. Time and space seem of less significance here. The soul meets the lord of this region, and Satsangi see him bow down before their master in homage. This is true of each successive ruler. Again, they journey on, and reach another and vaster power center of universal or causal mind called Trikuti. This also has its ruler or nucleus. These two regions, Sahanstal Kanwal and Trikuti, with their millions of worlds and universes, constitute the heaven of most established religions. Now, even the idea of time and space ceases to exist. For on leaving this plane, the Satsangi sheds his mind, as lower down he shed his body. It is no longer needed in the plane he is now to experience. It is here that the naked soul, freed of all karmic trappings, suddenly realizes its own power and glory, and recognizes its complete identity with all creation, and the uncreated element it is entering. It has, to some degree, through its intense devotion, begun the actual merging process with the Almighty, and this proceeds apace as it penetrates the successively bright conditions it now experiences. Time and space, dark and light, good and bad, all the pairs of opposites which are the hallmarks of the mind, are recognized as the illusions they really are, and are left behind, for there is no longer duality of being, no longer me and thee. As it progresses, less and less effort is required, for not only is there less material resistance on successive planes, but individuality is being disseminated, and union with all other souls is imparting confidence and surety. Paradoxically, that is why the human being is spoken of as the top of all creation, for it is in human form that the greatest efforts have to be made. Far more energy is used, comparatively, in the first few inches a locomotive moves in hauling a train than at any other time in its journey. This region is known as Daswandwar, the 10th door, and its light is indescribably bright and increases in intensity and beauty as one proceeds. Having gained this spiritual plane, still somewhat admixed with matter, the soul begins to traverse a dark and fathomless abyss, where souls who have lost their way are apparently hampered from onward progress. They are blissfully satisfied with their condition, however, but only those accompanied by a saint of the first magnitude ever find their way across this immense void. It is of such utter darkness that, although the soul here has its own light equal to the light of 12 of our suns, it cannot cross this darkness without the light of the Satguru. Higher still, on the threshold of the final stage, is the region known as Banwar Gufa. From here, the soul gets its first glimpse of the final stage, and this instant it automatically realizes its complete identity with that glorious being, and with all else, and cries out, "I am God." Finally, still in the company of the Guru, we enter the ultimate heaven, Satchkhand, where the Master's duty is complete, for we are now one with the Lord of that region, a great ocean of light into which the drop of our being becomes merged. This plane is without end, but appears to recede into brighter and brighter regions, each purer than the last. Names for them are given to us for our guidance, such as the invisible realm, the inaccessible realm, and the nameless realm, Alaklok, Agamlok, and Anamilok, to distinguish them on this plane, but the Master explained that they beggar description. The final and all-pervading stage is known as Radha Swami Dham, the abode of the Lord of the soul. This, the Master said, was all love, nothing but unalloyed bliss, and an indescribable purity of love, for the soul has for all eternity united with the Lord.